Yes, guys, welcome back to the Cannon podcast. Happy Monday. Hope you're all doing very, very well. We are here to talk. We're meant to be talking Arsenal, but there's actually not really loads going on with Arsenal, so we're probably going to have quite the variety of topics today. We want to talk Euros. We want to talk the sort of PSR stuff. We want to talk. What else do we want to talk about? We want to potentially talk about the City hacking situation, which could be interesting to speak about. But yes, before we
It
do
wasn't
that,
us. We didn't hack into City.
we didn't hack. Well, I was just looking it up before we started recording. The guy who is threatening it is a guy called Rui Pinto, and I was just looking into him very sort of briefly. But the stuff he's revealed before is pretty mad. But I don't want to get into any hot water here, so let's move past that. Maybe discuss that at the end. Firstly, chaps, how are we? How are you, George?
All good, mate. All good. I have finally
Got skin fade.
Yes, a little bit. I gotta be young like
I've never seen you with a skin fade in my life.
You know what it is? I don't know if anybody feels this way, but I feel like when you first get a haircut, I hate it personally. Like my own haircut, I hate it for about a week and a half, and then I start to get used to it, and I'm like, you know what?
Yeah.
Now it's good, and it's grown in.
Yeah.
And it's like kind of like how I like it, but. Yeah, I don't know.
Comments. Let George know what you think. Let George know if you think it's a.
I reckon you should have gone for a mohawk, personally.
Yeah, you go for the Martinelli. I like it, George. I like you with a skin fade. That's so mad. Bhavs, thoughts?
Listen, man. We did mention it, I'm pretty sure. And he said, he's like, oh, once you get to a certain age, you can't change your haircut. But,
Yeah,
you know,
I think you did say that before.
you know what I mean? But he's listened and he's changed it, so we appreciate it. Maybe next time we'll go blonde as well. Try some colours out.
God.
It's a sad indictment of Arsenal that this is where we're starting on George's haircut.
Does George become
exactly.
the David Beckham haircut topic?
Yeah, that could be the whole pod.
Listen,
Let's talk Euros because there's sort of some stuff to discuss there. Maybe we should start with maybe one of the only sort of vague links that's coming out at the minute, which is about sort of Nico Williams and Spain and so on and so forth. I was reading something on Twitter, and it is funny how these things get blown out of proportion. I think someone said Williams is on a list somewhere at Arsenal, which is probably almost certainly true. And then the next thing you see is one of those aggregator accounts going, Nico Williams is Arsenal's priority target for this summer. You're like, hang on a minute. But they are, he's obviously had a really, really special game against Italy. I think Spain are playing again fairly soon. Is it tonight or maybe tomorrow? It was a really impressive performance. George, I'll come to you first. Nico Williams is a player I'm still kind of learning. I'm impressed by how he's been on both sides. I like him obviously as a player, as an exciting player. I look at him in terms of Arsenal. I'm not convinced if that is sort of the route we're going down. That is what we need. To me, he looks more like a sort of creative winger, get to the byline, get the cut back. I think his best ever season for Athletic Bilbao was like 6 goals or something. So I think a Williams might be an option, but I don't know. I when I think about what we're adding to our forward line this summer, and we'll come to later, whether that should be sort of prioritising the sort of forward areas or not. But when I think about what we're adding, I look at Williams, I think brilliant player, but I just don't know if is that what we need? Thoughts?
I love the player. I've talked about it, I think, on here, and I think what you're seeing is almost a function of his role in the team as opposed to maybe who he is. He's in terms of maybe a blank canvas from a winger perspective, Nico Williams presents you with everything you could ever want. He's got brilliant control off both feet. He's got a brilliant spatial awareness. He's perfectly fine both on the right and the left to a degree that I don't think is normal for most buys on the market. I mean, there's very few players that have his level of competency off both sides of the pitch. It genuinely doesn't matter to him. I think
because he played full seasons at Athletic Bilbao on the right, and then just played a full season off the left, which is very, very impressive.
Very, very much so. And I think, look, his goal scoring potential, you can't shirk around it because I think primarily he is the creative spark for his own team, but he's got a level of athleticism that I think is very strange compared to those typical creator types. You look at your Di Marias, even Saka to a certain extent. Nico Williams is incredibly explosive off a standstill. He is much more of a creative Kingsley Coman than he is maybe a Bukayo Saka, in my opinion. And because he's so smart and he's so intelligent with the way that he likes to use the ball, I think that people classify him as a a primary creator, when really, for me, he's going to develop into a really athletic, potent goal threat down the line. And I think what you can see, at least with the Euros, and at least in that Italy game, it's funny, social media and X in general. The first game he was shit because he didn't do anything, and then the second game he gets man of the match, and now he's the best player in the world. But I think what you noticed, at least with the shot, he was terrorizing Italy the entire game. But I think that crossbar shot was the superstar moment, and it's because look how short his backlift is when he's doing that. He's cutting inside, and the way he's able to generate that kind of power inside, what is a couple yards, is what's exciting. And then from a coaching perspective, you're like, okay, what do I have to teach you? What do I have to maybe fix in you right now? A lot of it's decision making. A lot of it is the idea that he can go in and out of games is purely a decision-making issue with him in the final third. So his first game, I don't think he was actually doing stuff that was massively different to the Italian game. It was all maybe a second or two off in terms of his release, in terms of his timing, when to recycle. He's got the skills, the base skills in terms of deep crossing, interacting with his midfield. He's got brilliant feet in tight spaces. I think it's his decision-making about when to carry on the outside, on the inside, when to attack goal. Those are things that you need to tweak. And that's why he can at times fade in and out of games, because he'll never really lose the ball. But in terms of being incredibly direct and penetrative to the back line, he needs to judge his distances a little bit better. And that's why you get either great games or kind of games when he's maybe ineffective or just okay. And he's still young in that aspect. But look, as a deal, it's difficult because I think as a winger, he's very much in the Sesko mold, where you're talking about a player in his position. If you could create the perfect prototype: fast, tall, strong under contact, ambipedal, tricky in terms of being a little bit of a street footballer, but also having that technical nous to really make sure that he's maximizing his talent. And then, of course, having great ball striking off both feet, playing both sides. As a winger, you're like, check, 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 pace for days. But as a deal, I'm looking at it, 42 million pounds, massive wage demands. And you're asking the question, personally at least, is that type worth the only buy in the forward line? And could you be happy with that? That's when those questions begin.
And I think that's kind of my issue with Nico Williams is I think in isolation, it could be a good move alongside, say, it's dream world, say went out and got an Osman, right? If you also go get a Nico Williams and you improve in the midfield and do everything else we need to do, oh my God, it's an incredible buy. But I suppose my reservation about Nico Williams is if this is our idea to go and fix our forward line and that's the answer and that's the one player in that sort of area, fix is probably the wrong word, but you know what I mean, to go and raise the level in that forward area, I'm not sure that is exactly what he is yet, and obviously still learning the player. I'm not a world expert on every single player in the world, unfortunately, just yet. But Bhavs, there was someone else on the right hand side for Spain who is pretty special. I rarely say this about young players, but I think Lamine Yamal is like future Ballon d'Or. Like I look at that talent, I look at the intention in his play, the way he takes the touch forward every single time, the fearlessness he's playing with at the moment. I just love him. I really love him, and he looks to me like he could be 100%. And the reason I don't say it very often is because I hate overhyping young players. But to me, I look at him and I go, what is stopping him going on and being a Ballon d'Or level talent in 5 years' time? Maybe even less. That kid looks to me really special.
He is. He's a player that I hope gets protected well, because you can see the talent straight away. And I hope that referees give him the nice protection, because if he can stay fit for his career, we're talking someone that's... I've not given this feeling of watching a young player since Lionel Messi. And I didn't watch him play live when I was young either, but just seeing clips of those and seeing how he's just dancing through players and looking like he's not out of place. And this is at 16, by the way. I think Messi broke through slightly after that as well. So you're talking at 16, 17 years of age, you're playing at this high level, going to your first ever European Championships and looking like a star straight away. Yeah, the only thing that could be is injuries, and I hope that never happens, because he's a star that I just want to watch just to watch him play. Not even, I'm a Spain fan, I'm a football fan, and I like seeing wingers that are inventive, that are tricky, that are just exciting to watch. You know, you can see everything he wants to do, and if it doesn't work out at times as well, you can see the idea behind it. And he's a player. I think watching Spain in general has been very exciting this tournament. Just seeing two wide forwards, young age, very direct, and just going, look, we're going to run at these players and cause issues. And I think it reminds me a bit of, you know, when you look at Bukayo Saka and Martinelli for Arsenal at times, where you got two young wide forwards a few years ago, very direct. I think Saka's a bit different, but Yamal's a player that I honestly think can become the best right winger on the world. It may be the best winger in the world, and I think Ballon d'Or is definitely a good shout, because when you play for a team in Spain as well, you know, I think the last, was it 10 or 12 Ballon d'Or winners, most of them have come to Real Madrid or Barcelona, so he's got that advantage on his side anyways. I'd love him at Arsenal, but we got Bukayo, which is crazy. But look, yeah, no chance of that. But look, if we talk about Nico Williams as an example, I saw stats of, you know, his dribbles per 90 last year in La Liga, and it was top. It was next to, I believe it was the highest, joint highest in the league, 2.8 per game. And I think you talk about £42 million there. I think in that current market, that could be a complimentary signing. I don't think that would be a main signing. I think if we were going to sign Nico Williams, it'd be a wide forward. Then you can go for a striker. I think that's why I look at it similar to Šeško in terms of it's an opportunity. You know, you can go and pay that money, and you can go and sign the player. And we talk about who's actually available. We always talk about Rashford and Leao and the ideal striking wide forward signing. The only player that's actually available that you can actually go and sign is Victor Osimhen. That's it. There's no other player like Declan Rice last year that's actually available that you can go, okay, let's negotiate this for you, we'll make it happen. Those other players you have to force to leave those clubs. Nico Williams is available. And that's where you have to look at yourself and go, look, if I pay that £42 million now, is he worth more than that in the future? I think so. You know, I see the fundamentals for that. You look at Mikel Arteta's history of wide forwards, the work he did with Sané and Sterling at City, Saka and Martinelli at Arsenal. You know, fundamentally, he's got everything I want in a wide forward as well. Pace, trickery, directness, 21 years of age, available right and left-hand side as well. I think he had like 11 assists last year in La Liga as well, so he's very creative. He's got so much there, and that's the £42 million. It's not the fact that I want the player that badly, but I think maybe Mikel might look at that and go, maybe not a first signing we make, but if we're getting late into the market and no one signed him at that point, because someone will pay that. So he's going to leave Bilbao this summer, whether it's Arsenal or it's Liverpool or someone else, or Chelsea, because Chelsea love wide forwards at this point. He's going to go somewhere. So it's Arsenal's choice to go, look, do we want to take that opportunity? Because we see a player here that in the long term could be, you know, one of our star wide forwards.
Yeah, as I say, I think there's definitely an opportunity there. I think it has to be considered in the sort of the context of a wider window for Arsenal. I think, as you guys have been saying, like the fundamentals are clearly there for Williams. Are you, Bhavs, are you in the camp of like, we're losing something from wide forwards? Because there is a sort of like growing sense of like, oh, the game, you know, Pep and Arteta have ruined the game and everyone's just a ball to feet winger.
It's look, I hear the arguments, and the best example for this is Jack Grealish. Watching him play for Aston Villa in that season, and the way he was so direct, so inventive, such a maverick, such an exciting player to watch, and seeing him now at Man City, and I'm not saying Pep's ruined him, but I think he has, in a sense, you know, in terms of what he was as a player. That exciting player is allowed to drift centrally, allowed to go all over the pitch and kind of make things happen. We remember seeing him at Aston Villa. He was beating 5-6 men. He's not allowed to do that, I see, because Pep plays a different style of football, which is fair. But I feel like in terms of how football's going now, these two new wide forwards, Williams, Yamal, we're getting to that stage again where there's more naturally gifted wide forwards. Like you look at Bukayo Saka, he's very well gifted, but no one expected him to be this elite right winger. He was a left back for Arsenal.
He's refined.
He's kind of surprised a lot of people. Refined, exactly. He's more effective than anything. Yamal is just naturally
street,
God-gifted talent.
There's a bit of street.
Like, it's honestly something. It's how much of that is coached. Like I look at Bukayo, go, he's a very well coached right forward. He's learned very well. He's a very good learner. I look at Yamal, go, what you have there is not as much coaching as just a lot of natural ability. And those type of wide forwards, they have been rare. Like the Eden Hazard, the player that you can go, like he can complete 6-7 dribbles a game. Neymar, that type of profile. Who was it in the current generation? Maybe Kylian Mbappe at times, but even him, I don't think he's obviously very direct, but I don't think he's a dribbling type of wide forward. Now we're getting to the stage where you see Nico Williams come through in the same tournament as Yamal, and you go, okay, look, and the same team as well. And the fans go, okay, yeah, we can see that type of wide forward. But it is rare that we've seen it in the last 3-4 years, a new one coming through. So I can see why fans will say that. But I am in the camp of, yes, football is getting rid of Pep Guardiola. He needs to retire tomorrow.
Yeah, he should. Yeah, yes, to be clear,
bye-bye.
Pep does need to leave. Yeah.
Well, I do agree.
Well, yeah, like I think there's actually just a little bit more to this thread, because I don't know, did you guys see what Fabio Capello had done as a breakdown on the difference between Italy and Spain by any chance?
No.
If not, I'll just do a little bit of I'll do the the impersonation of Alex and read the quote. But the technical gulf starts far away because our country doesn't cultivate quality anymore. Youth sectors teach tactics, but not technique. And this is the long-term results. So I coached in Madrid, and I know well how they play in Spain. The best movement of the training session is the rondo, not because they can joke and relax, but because the technique commands. Many people see Guardiola as the role model in Italy, but the Guardiola of 10 years ago. Pep has evolved. This confusion has led to today's limits on footballers never taking responsibility when it comes to the ball or dribbling past an opponent. We may have been confusing good football with sterile ball possession. Good football is what Spain do currently. That's the way to go. A model where Nico Williams, 21, always looks for 1v1 duels because the coach wants to. So I think that there's been this debate in terms of whether or not you're going to coach position and positional football with Mavericks, or the alternate has been kind of the Cesc Fabregas idea and the Arsene Wenger idea about basically having very big freedom of combination play and creativity. I mean, Arsene was very famous for never coaching, I would say, off the ball principles with the greatest of priorities. I think that he definitely did it more than people think. He wasn't a complete artist. And, I think it's really funny because when you start to look at his beginning part of his tenure, Arsene was very specific about defensive principles, especially in how he set up the team. But there was a level of creative freedom that he encouraged. He wanted players to discover it on their own. I think in countless interviews, you talk about past players saying, Arsene never told me to do something. Pep and Mikel are very different. They're very regimented in the way that they view occupation on the pitch. And they're not regimented in who's doing it, but they're regimented in there being particular phases, and how we approach play is very considered. And I think, I don't know the answer, I'll be honest. There's a part of me as a coach that prefers that defensive solidity, but then I can see the alternate view, maybe the purist view, in which are we able to see some of the spectacular? Are we going to be able to cultivate as many Mavericks in the future, as many Hazards, if we're going to continuously build a program of youth that talks about positional football so young, that talks about making sure not to lose the ball, not those fundamentals mean you don't try things as a youth. Part of the reason that we love the game, for example, you look at your Estevios of the future, you look at your, even just basically look at our squad in terms of Martin Odegaard, the praise he gets, half to 3/4 of it is because he looks good doing it. And I don't mean to be pedantic, but the technical aesthetic of his ability to dribble is brilliant. And that's why a lot of people really prefer, generally, footballers that look like they know what they're doing. And I don't know if we're going to be facilitating that in the future, if we're going to be constantly talking about positional systems and placing that much importance. It could be a caveat that I think Capello does a really brilliant job about talking.
Yeah. I think
it's weird, do you not think?
I was going to say the Harry Brooks. Do you guys know Harry Brooks? He's an individual development coach. I've spoken to a couple of times, and he talks about this a lot because he works with a lot of academies and stuff. And he says, similar to Fabio Capello, and there's this kind of culture in England of sort of teaching, not necessarily almost fostering that individuality. I do feel football always goes in cycles, and I think ultimately there's always going to be a struggle between sort of freedom and structure, and it's always going to be a sort of a balancing act of the two. I was listening to Andros Townsend on commentary, who, by the way, is actually pretty good. And he was talking about Gvardiol, and he was saying the sort of commentary, the main commentator was asking him about facing him for Luton, and he was saying, he's a good defender, but he doesn't get close to you. And I feel like there's a trend of defenders sort of not engaging early. And, I don't know whether that is related to sort of rigidity of position, but I wonder, there's always going to be question marks of how you solve problems on the pitch. And I wonder, maybe as defenders get a little bit more positional, as things become a little bit more rigid, whether there will be a sort of fallow ground for the players who are a bit more explosive, or a little bit more tricky, sort of skillful, to start solving problems again on the pitch, if that makes sense, for the likes of the Peps, for the likes of the Artetas. I think this is quite a famous Pep thing, that he thinks about football in terms of solving problems on the pitch and sort of finding solutions within players. That's how he thinks about the game broadly. And I do wonder whether the streets won't forget baller has kind of stopped solving so many problems, but will begin to, as defenders change and become a little bit more, centre-backy and let's call it, positionally aware, than sort of bombing forward and, sort of all that sort of thing. Whether you need players who unlock those problems that way more. There's always going to be cycles. There's always going to be revolutions and sort of trends of what defenders are like and what forwards are like, etc. So I don't know. I'd be interested if we sat here in 2 or 3 years' time talking about Lamine and Nico Williams as the kind of the next step forward. The sort of, do you remember that Euros where it felt like the winger was the proper winger that we remember was sort of coming back? It'll be interesting to see if that all changes. Speaking of sort of individual brilliance, there is some links, enough links for us to talk about it, to Eberechi Eze for Arsenal, who I don't think was sort of played like 20 minutes or so for England. I really, really like this player. I think, again, sort of on the theme of Yamal and Williams, what I love about him is his bravery, is his ability, especially centrally, to go at you, to sort of take players out of the game, to run at you, to find solutions in a very brave and forward, sort of front-footed manner. Bhavs, I'll come to you first. Eze, again, all these sort of deals that, are sort of in the offing have to be considered, again, in the sort of wider context of the transfer window. So kind of assuming we get what needs to be done, could Eze be part of a very good window for Arsenal? Do you feel like he's sort of somewhere in this sort of matrix that we're trying to form?
100%, man. You look at the profile itself, the fact that he can play on the left-hand side, he thrives on that side the most. I do feel like if we did sign Eze, it would be a nail in the coffin maybe for Emile Smith-Rowe, because I feel like they're very similar in terms of where they play on the pitch. And in terms of like Eze's numbers last year, 11 league goals, like he scores goals. And, 2.6 dribbles a game per 90. Like, we're talking about a player offering us a profile that we don't have. Who's a ball carrier that we have that plays consistently in our team? We can talk about Emile Smith-Rowe playing in the team, but he doesn't play in the team right now. So, if we look at Man City and what they have in Foden, and Alex always talks about a player that can receive the ball in turn, Eze can do that. And also, I think the biggest thing here is a release clause of £60 million. Is Eze worth that in the current market at his age with 4 years of Premier League experience? And I think so. I feel like he's a player that's got a history at Arsenal as well. He's a player from Hell End, so he's got the returning homeboy story as well. But I feel like this would be an upgrade on Emile Smith-Rowe. I feel like if Mikel signed for £60 million as well, he'd be a part of the starting lineup more often than Emile Smith-Rowe as well. So if it's an idea of taking Emile Smith-Rowe, cashing on his value right now, and signing Eberechi Eze, I'm all for it. Because he offers us something that we don't have. He's got a lot of experience. He's a player that I think can improve us straight away as well. And come to Champions League, he's a player I want on the ball. Because we talk about Mavericks. We don't have as many of them. Eze is a Maverick. And I think I'd love him at Arsenal.
Yeah. George, kind of two prongs to this, because Baz mentioned it there. Are we underrating how much football and an extra potential, definitely 2 games in the Champions League, but potentially more games also in the Carabao Cup because of the new seeding system, etc.? 2 prongs to this. Firstly, what do you think about the player and Eze, and potentially could it fit in with a deal? I feel like with always with these things, it's Eze and what, but I think there is a world in which Eze is part of a brilliant transfer window for Arsenal. And also, is there a question mark around, do we have to get rid of a sort of midfielder to bring in an Eze? Or do you feel there is a space for 1 midfielder, 2 midfielders without something leaving? Or where are you at with that?
I think that in terms of maybe the more offensive kind of 8, I think I'm more in the camp of we need to get rid of one to see a space there. I think all the space that we see in the midfield is in the back in terms of a 6-8. With just basic numbers leaving, Mohamed El Neni leaving means the 6-8 is open and available. Jorginho was really a 1-term contract. We all know that's a bridge to next year. We're likely not to keep him. Thomas Partey, his contract ends next year. The 6-8 position is definitely one that after a year, we're losing 2 to 3 players in. So it absolutely needs a space, a body. And then when you start to look at it, look, my problem with Eze and the transfer with the Eze is not so much the player, because I think he's a brilliant player. In terms of what I value, I think he's got a brilliant burst in those first 5 to 10 yards. I think he's got a brilliant manipulation of the ball. I think he offers us also a threat on free kicks as well. It's something that we don't have. And I think that he's actually quite good at free kicks. And so he adds a little bit of that. But then I'm questioning and I'm asking both of you guys, part of the reasons why you love Ebrije Eze is because he's a maverick, he's allowed to drift to different zones, and he's a carrier in midfield, something that Mikel Arteta has had in his squad and had fit and refused to use. And I mean, he's the one to ask because it's been to my frustration at least. But I mean, yeah, in theory, he solves it. But then I'd be bemoaning looking at the homegrown profile that absolutely solved this and got a man of the match performance at Luton for doing exactly what we would like Eze to do. So he shows that he can do it. It's not a matter of there being a skill gap here. And, do I need to spend £60 million in order to do that when I've got that profile in the squad? Sure, you can do it if you're telling me George Emil's leaving whether you like it or not. Okay, great. Then Eze's a great replacement for that, and he's a Premier League proven replacement for that. But again, I would really struggle to understand the logic if we don't sell one of the eights, because you're looking at Emil Smith-Rowe, Fabio Vieira, Martin Odegaard, Ethan Nwaneri is going to be involved. His counterpart, which isn't talked about, Miles Lewis-Skelly, my favorite person in the world, you're looking at a collection of eights broadly there that, again, I think we've talked about it. They cover every profile you could ever want as an eight. You've got a half space crosser. You've got a tight space carrier. You've got a tempo setter that likes to operate in the middle third. You've got Kai Havertz, who operates more as a second striker, tip of the diamond type, Romduder. Like, you've got so many profiles in that midfield. At this point, it's about replace with people you don't have faith in, potentially, in the eight department. But I do think that means that somebody has to go to open a space for it. And I'll be honest with you, mate, I look at Eze, and I had this comment in another group chat. He's a very good player, and this is going to come across negative. I like the player. Does he raise the ceiling of my team? I'm not sure. I think he will consistently give me a 7 out of 10. I think he will do the role that a lot of people want in the 8. And I'd like to have somebody in the 8, but I'd like a little bit more superstar quality. And I'm dreaming of more of your Musiala types, more of that type of player to come in and do that job. Now, I don't think that's available this summer. And it comes back to that big old question, what do Arsenal do in the transfer market? What's our goal? Because there's a gap between what you would ideally want in the market with what is available and you can afford. And there's that balancing act that I think a lot of people are doing when building their windows in terms of saying, for example, Bhavs mentioned it early in the pod, we're dreaming of the Leaos, the Rashfords, they're not available. So you look at Nico Williams and you start to say, it's not so much I love the player, I love what he could offer and the problems he solves for the price he does. And that's been the battle between a lot of people when you start debating some of these players, to be honest with you. Because, again, I like Eze, very creative. I think he's also versatile, and he's also more defensive than I think given credit for, but still not defensively top. Like when you're comparing Emil Smith-Rowe and Eze, I don't think Eze's got massive amounts of work ethic different to Emil Smith-Rowe. He's not massively better in the tackle. He's not massively better in terms of tracking his runners. In terms of all of the out of possession questions that people say, this is the reason Emil doesn't play, I don't think Eze massively shifts that. So it would be a question, right? Like it would be a matter of you putting faith in somebody maybe that you prefer, which is the coach's prerogative. But you'd ask questions and you'd have to ask him to leave.
Yeah, I think Eze's the better player, but again, is that, I think as you mentioned earlier, is that the massive ceiling raiser in the middle on its own that moves the needle those 5-10 steps that we all want? I don't know. As I said, I like the player. I think he is better than Smith-Rowe. I do think on what you were saying about why Arteta hasn't used that. I think Eze for me offers a little bit more burst, a little bit more bravery than Smith-Rowe. I think he's more sort of.
I think he's more aggressive, isn't he?
Physically robust, I think, than Smith-Rowe, what I've seen recently. Although Smith-Rowe could be on his way back to that sort of space and ability to ride challenges and so on. It's an incredibly tricky jigsaw, and I suppose this maybe facilitates us having a conversation about the priority, because it's all very well, Baz, for us to sit here and say, well, the priority this window is a forward, or the priority this window is a whatever position you want. If that player isn't on the market, you can prioritize it all you want. It doesn't make a difference. So, do you feel, and we are sat here with very few links. Of course, we can talk about the Euros and we can talk about the reasons why things might not be happening, the 30th of June limit, or whatever. You can make up any kind of story of why we're not hearing stuff, but we're not hearing stuff, and that's the kind of the bottom line. Do you sense that Arsenal will have a priority? Or do you think it's more of a kind of market type summer where we go, okay, let's see how the land lies. We've got our targets, we've got our links and so on. Because I'm starting to feel, I went into the summer thinking Arsenal were going, right, forward line is what we're doing. But actually the more I think about it and the more I talk about it, the more I'm like, I wonder if they're going, we're assessing loads of options. The links that we're seeing, I feel, are sort of Arsenal going, okay, what's happening here? What's happening here? What's happening here? And probably actually final decisions, I sense, aren't actually being made.
No. And look, the reason why I feel like I know there's not the reason why I feel like I know there's not a priority is because what we're used to seeing from Arsenal in previous windows is when they have a player they really want to sign, is we know about it from beforehand. Not even in terms of just at the start of the window, we're talking from January times, February times. This time around, it feels like whoever we get linked to is Eze is available, £60 million as an opportunity. Shesko was £55 million as an opportunity. Williams is an opportunity at £42 million. It's players that actually are available. And I think that's what Arsenal are doing is, look, just think out can we actually sign. We're looking for answers for our team solutions. But what solutions are actually available to go and get? We can talk about the likes of Liao so much, but if he's not available, why would you waste your entire market chasing a player who's not available? We've heard rumours of fans saying we want Isak as well, not available. So don't waste time on it. And you can some fans will go say, well, go make him available. Well, how do you do that then? How much do you want to pay for it to go make a player available? £200 million to go make him available. Some players just aren't for sale, and that is what it is. And when we look at our signings that we've made, Declan Rice was a player who West Ham had said, look, he's going to leave the summer, so we want something to go get him. So that's why I feel like it is very much looking at the market. How does it change post Euros as well? Which players might want to go, you know what, I want to leave my club this summer. Liao might go later in the window. You know what, I want to leave Milan this summer. I don't fancy Milan anymore. I want to go to London instead. And that's when you go and make your move there. So I feel like a lot of it is waiting to see what comes available. I feel like in terms of priority positions for myself as a fan, I want to look at midfield straight away and I go, look, last year in terms of goal scoring issues, a lot of it got resolved towards the end of the season regardless, and we scored a record amount of goals. I look at the midfield right now and the midfield market specifically, and I go, there's more players available there that can help us improve than up front and out wide. Because my targets out wide and up front are not available right now. And so that's why I'm looking at that midfield, whether it's a 6 or an 8, and I'm going, that's what I want. And so I feel like if we're looking at a marquee signing, a player that we're going to spend a high amount of money on, it will be more likely to be a midfielder than a forward, because that forward marquee isn't available in my eyes, unless of course it's Victor Osimhen, and if Mikel Arteta is convinced that he's the guy, and he wants to spend £100 million, then I'm sure George will be a very happy man.
Yes, George would be a happy man. I think George, coming to you then, because I'm just thinking forward, I'm like, where do I want to be by the end of August as an Arsenal fan? And like, I could be sat here with an overlapping fullback profile, a left back, and a wide player, or I could be sat here with a midfielder and a striker, and it feels like both scenarios would be kind of understandable. You'd be able to sort of make your logic or whatever. We'd sort of reverse engineer. You could make it all make sense. I don't know. To me, I feel very lost in terms of what I think. As I said, I went into this window going, the forward is the absolute priority. I don't care how you get it, but here's all the skills. But the more I talk about it, the more I'm like, I don't know. It's going to have to depend on the market, and it feels to me a very fluid situation, and it doesn't feel like anyone sort of from the journalist side of things knows what's going on. Doesn't feel like anyone from, I don't. Maybe I'm sort of looking back on it with rose-tinted glasses, but it feels like last summer everyone was like Rice, and then see what else happens. But actually, it doesn't feel like that this summer, and I don't know how to sort of approach it really, I guess.
Rice is so unique though because he was England's golden child. Like when you think about it, it wasn't even just an Arsenal. Like Rice, homegrown England player leaving for massive marquee, that was never going to be kept quiet in any universe. You could be City, Chelsea, whatever, it doesn't matter. He's England's golden boy. That was going to come out early and long, and it was going to be protracted, and you guys were going to make a big deal about it regardless of whether Arsenal were lucky enough to get him, right? So I think that was,
I definitely did.
Yeah, exactly. But look, mate, I'm very different to a lot of people. I think I'm very clear in what I would like to have from Arsenal this season, and I actually don't think that it's muddled in different. I think you can achieve it in different ways, so I'm not set in it being the people absolutely I want. I've always got lists, but you mentioned an overlapping fullback. I think that is a pillar of the window that nobody is talking about, And it really frustrates me because from a logic perspective, I always kind of begin arguments like, what would you ideally want? I talk about the person that opposes right now. I always ask them, like, what would you want? And some of the names that I get met with are Bruno Guimaraes, right? Like, who's another popular name of another passer? Martin Zubamendi, the typical links, a passing number 8 that's aggressive and can play both 8 and 6. Can we all agree that's what Twitter wants ideally? Okay, let's buy your favorite one. Let's ignore my personal feelings for a second. And let's say we bought the £100 million Bruno Guimaraes. We settled that release clause tomorrow. Okay? Now,
I think it's expired, by the way.
it has. It has expired. But let's say he's bought and he's through the door. I'm always asking, did you guys feel that the left-hand side was isolated last year? And with a resounding yes, Martinelli, Trossard, no matter who we put, the left wing is where we send players to die. That is what I keep getting told in conjunction with having a deep-lying playmaker. And I start to say, okay, how are you going to get the ball to your left winger that's isolated if you're adding another defensive deep-lying playmaker that's right-footed in that area? Well, George, he's a passer. And when you pair a passer and a runner together, naturally there's more chemistry. And I go, okay, fair. No problem. He'll definitely get more balls. But how are you making him not isolated and getting him into goal? Because somebody has to fill the area that he's leaving. So if you're assuming he's leaving from that wet left wing, he's going in the middle, great. Yeah. Who's filling that
Bruno
zone?
Bruno Guimaraes going to go stand on the...
Yeah, is Bruno Guimaraes going to be overlapping out wide and taking players on the outside? No, he's not. And so... So then and then they're like, well, Kai Havertz can do it. And I'm like, well, we saw that for the beginning part of the fall. Kai Havertz doesn't overlap to the left very well. Now, I think he should do better. And I think I would critique it, but we see that not work. So where is your overlap coming from? And so I'm very insistent on us recruiting an overlapping left back profile. And I think that our plans got kind of thrown into a little bit of a twist with the Kieran Tierney injury. I definitely think he was on the chopping block to leaving. And I think with having a major injury like that, probably puts him off being able to be bought, to be honest with you. So there's a situation where I don't even think we can settle alone and that he will be in the squad next year. Yep. But if you're going...
Is that our option on the left? Is that decided for us?
It's not ideal, but it is that profile. And no, like... I'm very set. I firmly believe I could fix Arsenal's problems with £150 million in terms of buying Alphonso Davies and Victor Osimhen, and I would be extremely happy. I would want another midfielder.
Of course you want a Canadian.
But, mate, I don't know if you guys are watching the Copa America, but it's not just that. He offers versatility in terms of being a winger. Both of these players in conjunction. That's the level of X factor. Like when you guys talk about we can't guarantee and who's on the market, those are two world-class players on the market. Alphonso Davies is rejected. He's not signing a contract with Bayern. He will be a maximum 45 to 50 million pounds. Guaranteed. Are we going to have to pay a lot of wages? Yeah, you're damn right, because he's probably one of the best left backs in the world, and I'm okay with doing that. I mean, I think my biggest thing is in a market that looks so unclear because people don't know what the plan is from Arsenal, I'm looking at players that give me clarity, that I can recruit right now, that I know have a pedigree and past to take us to the next level. Alphonso Davies has performed at the Champions League and at the top end of the pitch for the last 3 to 4 years. He's 24 years of age. He would give you 6 to 7 years of very good playing, 2 contract cycles, and he offers you versatility in multiple different roles, not just as an overlapping fullback, but also as versatility at both right wing and left wing, which he's shown for Canada for years. And by the way, grew up as a winger. So in terms of 45 cheap deal, check. Marquee X factor, check. Versatile to multiple areas, check. When I look at Victor Osimhen, I get similar feelings. I know what he is. He's a top-end number 9 that will solve the mid-block problem, undoubtedly. I look at him. He's available on the market. Napoli actively pushing him out. Conte actively pushing him out. Arsenal seeming like the only major marquee club there. There's an opportunity to negotiate. I find when we talk about all these other alternate marquees that we talk about, I find that there's a level of, I need to see what the club give me. So for example, Bruno Guimaraes, does his release clause go down? Are we, Arsenal, going to trigger it in the next day or two? No. I mean, I think it expires today or in the next couple of days. You look at your Martin Zubimendi. Is he leaving Spain? Do we know? Frankie de Jong, other people's favorites. Is he going to leave a flick Barca who, after making him feel incredibly important and after having reported as him being untransferable now? I don't think so. And so I'm left personally looking at who's available in the market that can give Arsenal the quickest fix to their biggest problem. And by the way, who can come in and perform now. Because, guys, we have the Copa America, we have the Euros. Arsenal need to start strong. And by the way, we have a difficult start. Our points, and if we're going to, again, look back on a title if we lose, are going to come in the first 8 to 10 games, in my opinion. I actually think that when looking at the schedule, Arsenal have a fairly good schedule. There's at least one big team in every month, except for April. April's a very kind month, and I think December is actually a fairly good month. So ironically, our busiest months of the year, we actually have very good schedules in. But I do think our biggest and our toughest tests actually await us in the first 8 games of the season. We've got Tottenham away, we've got City, we've got who else do we have at the beginning? That's pretty tough. I think we have another couple mid-table clubs as well.
I think we're West Ham as well. And City, yeah, West Ham, Tottenham, Bournemouth away as well. I think we've got a few games. Chelsea away, no? Is it?
Yeah, so
like the first 6 away games are pretty hard.
Yes, and so I think that it's imperative that Arsenal start strong. And by the way, I don't see our best players back fit. I mean, Saliba, I think, is going to go deep into the competition. Who's starting, by the way. He's going to actually need... I always felt like he would start for France, and we're going to need time with him. Declan Rice, Bukayo Saka, both are going to be starting for England, hopefully going deep, although I think my early knockout picks are England. I think that Austria will have something for you. But, I think that our top players are going to be playing late into tournaments. Gabriel Martinelli, Gabriel, our center back, is going to be playing, I hope, for Brazil, or at least if he's with the squad, they're going to go far in the Copa America. So you're looking at a majority of our starting 11 that, in theory, will not have a preseason or coming back late from preseason. It's going to lead to some major disjointing. And I just think that we need to be dominant in the market to find players that we know what they are, we know what they can do, and we know that they can come early for preseason and get on that plane in the 3rd week of July. And so I think that should be a focus.
I hear the arguments, and I think there's a lot of merit to them. I guess the question is whether the club want to solve, whether firstly the club do want to solve the problems that they solve is a question, and we can't know that. We may think we know that, but we can't know that. We don't know what Mikel thinks. And whether they then go out and do that is a separate question. I think you make really, really good arguments, but I would also say, okay, well, for example, on Alphonso Davies, Arteta hasn't signed that type of fullback before, so it would be a break out of the mold in that sense. And also in Osimhen, I think there's a lot of arguments against it. I think there's a lot of arguments for it as well. But you could say, if it was revealed that the club felt okay, it's going to be too difficult to deal with Napoli, or they're worried about his injury issues, or they're looking at a wide forward instead, or they feel they can continue with Kai Havertz, I'm not necessarily saying I'd agree with that, but I can imagine it happening. Do you know what I mean? So I just think, look, I think it's great that you have such clarity over the window. I don't sort of share that, but I think the only thing we can do is wait and see.
Guess there what? People, also just come out, by the way, because I can't keep my smile. Calcio Mercato, Daniel Longo, a very reputable journalist, just said that Napoli are willing to lower the valuation for Victor Osimhen to 100 million euros from his release clause, and I knew this would happen. They're actively pushing him out. Look, I know it's weird because nobody has clarity, but I think nobody has clarity because they don't think Arsenal have clarity. I don't know if it's because they think that nobody has... they know what they want, but maybe they're not seeing the plan from Arsenal, and therefore it's difficult for me to be sure that's what the club will do. But maybe there's a plan that you feel you absolutely could build that could fix Arsenal and could fix them with maybe players that could come in and affect play right now. But it's I don't see that happening with Arsenal, so it's very difficult for me to dream of that scenario.
Yeah, look, to say, me being unclear of the plan on a podcast is nothing to do with what Arsenal are going to do. Do you see what I mean? And I think you can feel clarity or not clarity. And obviously, you feel more clear on what the club might do or what they could do, whatever. I feel a little bit less clear, but that doesn't mean that Arsenal don't have a plan. I think that can often happen where fans sort of go, "What are we doing in the market? We've got no idea." It's like, well, you don't know, do you? You don't know. I personally don't have a lot of clarity, and I think there's so many arguments and counter arguments either way for a lot of players that I feel like sort of currently just sort of lost in the sauce a little bit. But Bhavs, before we move on to something else, is there anything sort of on that before we sort of close up on the market?
I think a lot of it comes down to a lot of players that fans want are the players that get linked to the club. That's just simple as that. So that's the form of clarity. Is if we get linked to Alphonso Davies tomorrow, we all want Davies because we're linked to him. We will start watching videos about him. A lot of the ordinary fan doesn't watch any other team but Arsenal, or the team they support. They don't go and watch as many games of Bayern Munich and Alphonso Davies week in, week out. We're not all George. We don't have a scout. We can't all watch the scouts. So a lot of it is just fans will see a player get into the club, watch a lot of highlights, see a few clips of him in terms of interviews and all that type of stuff, and go like, we want this player only. And I feel like only because this window we've not got as much of that, and the reporters haven't been briefed by the club as much either, which is fair. But also because of the Euros. I remember very vividly, actually, the 2021 summer, when the last Euros, it was very slow. It was very slow up until after the window. And then we signed Odegaard, and we signed Ramsdale, and we signed quite a few other players, Samuel Lokonga and players like that. So I feel like a lot of clarity will come for fans when they see reports and see David Ornstein drop a few bombers, and they go, okay, look, this is the player we're going to sign, and let's go watch highlights, and he's going to be amazing.
Yeah, and it'll all be a lot clearer, and we'll all go, oh yeah, we knew it all along.
And there will be a scouting report as well on the Cannon podcast.
Of course there will be, and we'll all go, oh, we knew it all along. But I have to be honest.
Yeah,
as I say,
it all made sense.
It's not what I feel, but we'll see. We will see. And that, again, as I said, that doesn't mean the club doesn't have clarity. It's just we're in a bit of a sort of weird spot. However, this is going to be a lovely little transition. You watch this. Some clubs do have clarity on cheating.
Okay.
There has been some interesting moves in the last couple of weeks.
Alleged cheating. We don't want to get a cease and desist letter from Man City.
We'll discuss how we feel about it. Villa, Everton, Aston Villa and Villa are the same club. Villa, Everton, Chelsea. Other clubs are involved. There's a few others.
Villa, Everton, Chelsea. Maybe Newcastle. I've heard as well.
Newcastle. Yeah, there's a few. Yeah, a few others. So I had to look up, because just for clarity, because I think a lot of people, they see this and they go, there's something dodgy. But I imagine there are some people sort of going, yeah, this is all weird, and actually don't know why this is a problem. And I was one of those people. So the reason is, and someone explained this to me, basically the players that you sell that are homegrown, you can immediately register as pure profit this year before the 30th of June. And the players that you sign, so for example, Villa signing Ian Maatsen, obviously they can amortise that over a couple of years. So essentially they can look like they've almost made money by signing Ian Maatsen rather than, and that's sort of the creative accounting. So that's what's happening. I'm sure most people knew that, but there's, that thing when everyone's like, yeah, this is awful. I'm like, do you know why this is awful? I didn't know. So yes, there is something to unpack here. My personal take, and Baz, I'll come to you first. I don't blame the clubs, and actually I always feel this with like sort of people, and this is, just indicative maybe of my mindset. I don't really blame the clubs. I blame the rules. If the rules are there to be broken and you want to gain a competitive advantage, if Arsenal could do this and didn't sign a player and missed out on a massive target because we didn't do this, even though other clubs were doing it, I'd be annoyed. So I don't think we can sit here as fans of other clubs and we can joke about it on social media or with each other and say they're cheating or whatever. But actually when it comes down to it, ultimately it's down to the rules, and the loophole should be closed. I don't personally blame the clubs.
Yeah, of course. Look, they're also businesses at the end of the day. They need to do what's best for them financially. And if they know that they can't sign players and they've got certain rules to abide by, and we've seen the Premier League, when you do break PSR, you can get charged points. So to avoid that, they're going to do whatever it takes. And these clubs are clever. They've got lawyers. They've got people that, will find the loopholes. And we've seen it at Chelsea with the contracts they signed as well. So if they see something there, they're going to go for it. And until it becomes, until there's a rule in place to stop it, and the Premier League gets onto it, they're going to keep doing it. And we've seen it in the past as well. So I don't blame them. I don't blame the club specifically. It is annoying as a fan watching it, but you're right. If it was Arsenal and we needed to sell players, to go and sign players, fans would be happy. They go, oh, look at us with the red cartel, and we get all this in our favour. But I see why, you could classify it as cheating. It isn't fair as well, and, just seeing it at times. But until it gets stopped, or we keep happening, and how does it get stopped? Is it an independent, moderator of the Premier League, someone to look over and say, okay, this is wrong, this is right? That's not in place yet. And so I feel like this will become a theme until there's an actual something in place to stop it. And I don't know what it's going to be, to be honest, because the Premier League aren't always quick to react, as we've seen in the past.
Yeah, I mean, Chelsea have been selling off hotels and all that sort of stuff. I think there will always be loopholes in rules. To be honest, I think, it's very easy to kind of sit here and the Premier League have lost control or whatever. The Premier League's a very well run business. Like compared to most, look at the success of the Premier League, how it's managed to globalize itself. Generally, of every single, and I find this when people work in organizations, there's always just this sort of, I think it's quite a British thing as well, of like every company you work for are rubbish, and the HR department are rubbish, and they don't deal with this, and they haven't got that. Every company has problems. You will not find a single company, organization, more than 3 people in a room who don't have problems with politics. So basically, same with players, choose your problems. And I imagine this loophole will be closed pretty soon. There was a loophole, and it will change as we're sort of understanding what the PSR rules are. This is all quite new. This is new to the Premier League. This is new to UEFA. They're trying to get a sense of what's going on. I think the rules are changing again next season, and I think it will come to some kind of agreement. George, am I being a centrist dad, or am I being fair?
It's difficult for me because I think I was okay with everything up until the youth. Shock.
Not the youth.
Shocked.
Look, I don't want to be doomerist, but I mean, I think we're going down a very slippery slope when we're casting off development for the sake of circumventing financial exploits that were your own doing. And I don't feel comfortable.
Just to push back though, is it a slippery slope? Because I look, I'm not saying I'm not happy with what's happening, but I imagine these loopholes will be closed very soon, and it probably won't happen again.
Would you feel that way if we lost Ethan to the same situation, or Cheeto, or?
Well, I'm talking more about the rules rather than specific cases. Look, in specific cases, it's not good for whoever Lewis Dobbin and all these players to be in these situations. I'm not saying that's right, and I think the loophole should be closed. To be absolutely clear. I think that's more about the rules themselves. My point is more, I feel this will get resolved fairly soon, and this loophole will be closed. And I think then we can kind of draw a line under this. But maybe I'm wrong.
No, like I think the rule will change, but it has to change because again, that's the slippery slope. If it doesn't change and the rules stay the same as is, this would keep happening to a much larger scale, to everybody's scale, to a scale of also the big clubs. And I'm not Lewis Dobbin, for example. Who is Everton's winger? By the way, like people don't understand some of the situations that we talk about. He's not some nobody. He played for the Premier League. He was probably one of their only recognized wingers. They're doing it quite clearly to cheat and circumvent PSR. It's not a case of anything else. Tim Ingraham from Aston Villa is not somebody that's had a single minute of Premier League football. And when you look at some of the market values for both of these players, by the way, both are something along the lines of £2 to £3 million at maximum, going for 10 to 12. It's quite clear cheating in my opinion. And the thing that I get frustrated with is because it is at the expense of development, and it is at the expense of, to me, I will go hard in terms of saying, when you have homegrown players that you believe are going to have a major impact on your first team, and again, I'm talking about your Cheeto Obies, I'm talking about your Ethan Nwaneries, your Miles Lewis-Skellies, when you believe you're at that level of talent being sold off or potentially sold off, okay? And many Premier League clubs are doing this, then I think you rip away the soul, and you also push your youth to want to leave. I mean, we're going to have a discussion about that very soon on the Cannon podcast, in my opinion. Not just in my opinion, it's going to happen. So I hope you guys are excited for that. But that's a very Arsenal-specific conversation. I look at the wider conversation in the league, and I get nervous. I mean, look at Juventus right now. For what they believe, they're getting a steal, which I'm going to assure you that Aston Villa deal, by the way, is probably deal of the summer, getting Samuel Ealing Jr. and Enzo Barranquilla, as well as 28 million euros for the price of Douglas Luiz. Crazy value from a Villa perspective. But from a Juventus perspective, they feel wrongly and stupidly, I might add, and I'll go that strong, but they needed to get Douglas Luiz at any cost. The cost of that was their 2 best prospects. And they also put up Dean Heilman as well, their center back, who has been equally as highly rated, up for sale as well in the deal. He just declined. They were asking for Sule as well. So, I mean, it comes from not even just an English perspective. I think every major team right now, you're looking at youth as a way to circumvent financial deals. And I don't think you're looking at youth, by the way, that are cast-offs. Like, I think I'd take a very different stance if we were talking, all respects given, to maybe somebody like a Ruel Walters, a Miguel Aziz, somebody, or Charlie Patino, people that you maybe have faith could become something, but you don't know, and you don't want to keep at the club. These two players from Juventus, they were kept at the club, and they were considered major pieces, and they were moved because of financial reasons. I think, Dobbins for Everton was something I was very shocked at, because I don't think that Everton have a winger. And I think they're looking at now, ironically, Minta from Newcastle to circumvent PSR in another way, because Newcastle themselves want to buy Dominic Calvert-Lewin. So I feel dirty discussing this without talking about what's clearly circumventing squad holes for the expense of youth development. Now, if it works out, I don't think it's illegal. I won't go as far as saying that it's illegal for people. It's clearly there and they're able to do it because of the rules, but it feels dirty to me.
Yeah, I think there's a discussion to be had about youth development. I do feel that's independent of these rules that clubs are kind of exploiting. And the only thing I'd say, you use the word cheating. Look, you can call it that. It's within the rules. So I think by that very different definition, I personally don't think it's cheating. I would argue that there's kind of cheating and there's cheating. If you see what I mean, you can cheat within rules. I hear that, but think
their values are completely. I don't know. They're 10x the values of what they actually are.
No,
I mean it would be. It's the same. But it's the same case as, for example, the commercial revenues. So we have a rule on commercial. It's cheating because we're assuming the rules as stand aren't changed. So sure, it's not cheating because the rules are, but you're asking for the rules to change, right? So then in theory,
and I think they will. Which is why I don't present this is sort of my overall point. I don't see this as a kind of existential threat. I think that there's a youth development conversation, and again, young players being used as kind of pawns in a business game, which I don't agree with. I'm not saying it's right. If I could choose, could it happen or not happen? I'd say not happen. But personally, I think I see it as something that is a kind of quirk of the PSR rules. A summer where we're going to look back and go, yeah, there was that summer where clubs could do that, and that was changed. If you want to have a conversation about youth development, and we will tomorrow on the Cannon Podcast, I think we can have that. But I don't know, personally, and I could be wrong, and I'm interested to hear what people think. I don't view it as cheating because I think it is within the rules.
But how is that different from a commercial revenue perspective, that the entire caste system and the entire city case, for example, is unfair market value determined by the people that are buying it? Like, if you're going to morally...
Because you're not allowed to do that, but you are allowed to inflate you are technically allowed to inflate your prices for a young player.
Sure, but like the theory is it's the same thing, different strokes for different folks. And just because the law hasn't been set right now, which I think we're all saying with the caveat that it will be changed, so it won't be illegal, isn't the whole point of the cheating part not just that the rules say it, but that people fundamentally think it's unfair for a sponsor to dictate their true value, and it should be determined by an independent regulator. And for example, an independent regulator in terms of the market decides what your youth are worth. And generally speaking, youth are worth between £2 to £3 million within the country. But then you're seeing people without a Premier League appearance leaving for £14 million, and other players leaving for £30 million going in the other direction, that are determined by the clubs, not the market. The clubs that are completely involved under PSR debates.
As far as I understand it, the inflation of commercial sponsorships that City did was and is illegal on paper. And is, as part of the rules that the Premier League clubs abide by, and I think also UEFA clubs abide by as well. The inflation of your youth, while distasteful and should be illegal, is not illegal. Therefore, I don't think we are able to class it as cheating. But Bhavs, we're slightly locking you out.
I agree. You can't. It's just a team taking advantage of circumstances. It's like a team on the pitch. Some teams do some things that are dirty and we don't think it's right, but they do it to win. And I think that's what it is in this aspect as well.
A good example is Mourinho. I remember he had an interview with someone. He talked about. It was John Terry. And Mourinho found a loophole in the laws that apparently when two players go down, you can't continue the game or something. It's now been changed. But if two players were down, you can't continue the game. So he used to waste time, make his players have like a clash of heads or like go in for a challenge and go down. Now, Immoral, yes. Should be changed, yes. But for me, I don't think you can say cheating is when you are, for me, actively going against laws, which is what happened in the sponsorship case. But I don't know. I personally, I don't view it as a kind of existential threat. It's not good for those young players to be in that position, but I do feel it will change.
I don't know. I think if you know it's wrong, you can smell it's wrong. I don't need to see a law to know that it's wrong. Like even in the Mourinho case, it was cheating for me. I mean, sure, it's legal and you can do it, but it's just like saying, okay, if you can get away with it, and you're assuming that the rules wouldn't be changed down the line. I know for me, this is just my personal stance with it. I think if you're inevitably saying that the rules should change, then you're also saying it is a slippery slope because you're saying that you want the rule to change. And unless you're saying that the rules are fine as is and we should continue with this being a normal practice and there's nothing wrong with it, then that's not a slippery slope. Like for me, the idea is it isn't technically cheating because of the law. I understand that. But for me, I can respect other fans, for example, even City fans themselves that say that they're fine because they believe that their commercial sponsorships on their own shouldn't be attributed by an independent regulator. And we disagree with that because that's a fundamental business decision. And I think when you look at the youth in general, what is a youth worth? And especially with pure profit and in terms of circumventing it. I mean, we can even talk the hotels at a push, guys. Like for me, I don't think that's right. I mean, I think the rules will be changed to stop it, but I don't
think it's right, but it wasn't cheating. That's kind of my point. I don't think it's right either.
We're not saying they should do it, but I can see why they've done it.
Oh, of course.
Because until you can do it, you're going
to take whatever margin you can get as a team.
Yeah, that's what it is. It is like doing anything to win. We've seen it with players dive to win penalties. It's not right, but they do it anyways, and they get away with it. So it happens, and it's football.
This feels like one of those like moral tests that people do, where it's like if you saw a wallet on the street, what would you? It's like, well, it's not wrong.
What would you do? What would you do? Would you take the £5? Probably take the £5.
We'll leave it up to the comments because we've got to finish. We didn't get time to talk about Karl Heinz's new contract. I'm sure there's people literally crying in the comments saying, "Talk about Karl Heinz's new contract." But we'll come on to a youth discussion we mentioned a few times. Tomorrow we've got Tom Canton on. And I'm going to be moderating a kind of change my mind section, which should be interesting about the youth. And we're going to talk all about that, get into that, which will be good stuff. We'll have scouting later on in the week. All good stuff. But guys, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it. Make sure you like and subscribe wherever you are. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple, maybe leave us a review. How about that? We never ask for those. Maybe leave us a review if you enjoyed this podcast. How about that?
How do you leave a review
4 stars.
For people that don't
5
know
stars.
and they're like me with tech, how do you leave a review?
George, with all due respect, I would suggest 99% of people would know that. But for the 1%
like a
of
review section.
1% of Canadian people with landlines who don't know, you can go on the Cannon Podcast page on Apple and scroll
George,
to the
does
bottom.
your phone still flip
and you'll
open?
Find it.
I have one. The Razor. Do you guys remember that?
You have a flip phone?
It's my backup. It's my backup to my iPhone everything. In case it crashes.
He flips out.
It explains everything. Lads, pleasure as always. Thank you for listening. Really appreciate you being here. Thanks as always for listening to the Cannon Podcast. And thanks for keeping it Arsenal.
Peace.
Peace.